At Thanksgiving dinner, my mom passed out envelopes, a little bonus for everyone who helps around here. When she skipped me, my sister laughed. Guess you don't count. I just smiled, took a bite, and waited. That night, I shut down every family account I funded. By morning, their bonuses were gone and their cards declined at breakfast. But that wasn't the only thing they lost. The cranberry sauce gleamed under the dining room chandelier like drops of blood on bone china. I bought that chandelier 3 years ago when the old one finally gave out, just like I paid for the new roof, the kitchen renovation, and the property tax bill that would have sent my parents into foreclosure. Nobody mentioned those things, of course. Jessica passed the rolls, my sister Victoria said without looking at me. She never looked at me anymore, not directly. I had become furniture in this house, somewhere between paying off her credit card debt and covering her daughter, Lily's private school tuition. I handed her the basket. The rolls were from Whole Foods because Mom's arthritis made baking difficult these days. I knew this because I'd driven her to her rheumatologist appointments for the past 18 months, always scheduling them around my lunch breaks from the marketing firm where I clawed my way up to senior director. "These are cold," Victoria announced, dropping a roll onto her plate with theatrical disgust. "Mom, didn't you warm them?" "I forgot. Honey, it's been such a hectic day." Hectic. The woman had spent the afternoon arranging store-bought dishes on serving platters, while I'd been at the office until noon, then stopped at 4 different stores, collecting everything she'd texted me to grab. The turkey alone had cost $200 from that organic farm she'd seen on some cooking show. My father carved the bird with the precision of a surgeon, which made sense, considering he'd been one before retirement. "Excellent choice this year, Patricia," he said to my mother. "Much better than last year's dry disaster." Last year's turkey had been my responsibility too. I cooked it in their oven while juggling a product launch crisis on my laptop. Apparently preventing a multi-million-dollar account from walking had been less important than basting every 30 minutes. Around the table sat the usual suspects, my parents at either end, like king and queen of their diminishing empire, Victoria and her husband Brandon on one side with 13-year-old Lily and me alone on the other side, like the odd number that didn't fit the equation. Brandon worked in middle management at a telecommunications company, the sort of job that sounded important at parties, but barely covered their mortgage. The mortgage on the house I co-signed for when their credit couldn't secure the loan alone. "So, Jessica," Brandon said, attempting conversation the way someone might attempt diffusing a bomb carefully and with visible anxiety, "how's work going?" He'd already lost interest, turning to ask my father about the Patriots game. Victoria's phone buzzed. She checked it, smiled, and typed rapidly under the table, probably texting her friends about their upcoming trip to Cancun, the one I'd heard her discussing with Mom last week. I wasn't invited. Naturally. My presence would dampen the mood, make everyone remember the walking ATM who funded their lifestyle. The meal continued, with the usual rhythm, Dad holding court on politics. Mom fussing over whether everyone had enough of everything, Victoria performing her role as the cherished daughter who could do no wrong, and me eating in silence while mentally calculating how much this dinner had cost me. Not just in money, though, that number was staggering enough, but in time, energy, and the slow erosion of whatever relationship we'd once had. I remembered being 7 years old, watching Victoria open her birthday presents while I sat cross-legged on the carpet with my own smaller pile. Even then, the distribution had been uneven. Mom had explained that Victoria needed more because she was older, more social, had more expenses. The explanation changed over the years, but the inequality remained constant. When I got my first job at 16, babysitting the neighbors' kids, Mom had asked to borrow my earnings to cover Victoria's homecoming dress. The loan had never been repaid. This pattern continued through college, where I'd worked 3 part-time jobs, while Victoria pledged a sorority funded by our parents. Through my 20s, when I climbed the corporate ladder, while she'd floated between yoga instructor and life coach and aspiring jewelry designer. Now I made $250,000 a year, and somehow I still felt like that 7-year-old with the smaller pile. "Dinner's wonderful, Patricia," my father declared, pushing back from his empty plate. "Shall we move to the living room?" We migrated like birds, following an ancient pattern. The living room furniture was new last year, after Mom had decided the old set looked dated. I'd split the cost with Dad, though his contribution had been roughly a quarter of mine. The throw pillows were from Restoration Hardware. The area rug was hand-woven. The coffee table book about Tuscan villas cost more than most people's actual coffee tables. Mom disappeared into the kitchen, emerging with a stack of cream-colored envelopes. My stomach tightened in a way I didn't immediately understand, some primal instinct sensing danger before my conscious mind caught up. "I want to do something special this year," Mom announced, her voice taking on that sugary quality she used when she wanted everyone to pay attention. "A little bonus for everyone who helps around here." She handed the first envelope to Dad with a kiss on his cheek. He opened it, smiled, and tucked what looked like a check into his shirt pocket without showing anyone the amount. The second envelope went to Victoria for being such a wonderful daughter and helping me so much this year. Victoria's eyes widened as she looked inside. "Mom, this is too much." "Nonsense, you deserve it, sweetie." Brandon received the third envelope for taking such good care of my daughter and granddaughter. Lily got the fourth, her teenage face lighting up. "Oh my God, Grandma, thank you." Mom handed out 2 more envelopes to people I barely registered at first. Then I realized Uncle Richard and Aunt Susan were there sitting on the love seat. When had they arrived? Had they been at dinner? The entire evening had taken on a dreamlike quality, sounds muffled, colors too bright. Everyone received an envelope. Everyone except me. Mom settled back into her chair, looking satisfied as a cat in cream. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds before Victoria laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "Guess you don't count Jessica." 7 words, 14 syllables. The summation of 32 years of being the acceptable daughter, the reliable one, the bank that never closed. Every head turned toward me. Dad's expression was carefully neutral, the way doctors look when delivering bad news. They've given 100 times. Brandon had the grace to appear uncomfortable. Lily was already counting her money, oblivious. Uncle Richard studied his hands. Aunt Susan found something fascinating about the Tuscan Villa book. Victoria's smile could have cut diamonds. I took a bite of the pumpkin pie I brought to the coffee table, letting the cinnamon and nutmeg dissolve on my tongue while I chewed slowly, deliberately. Everyone waited for my reaction, tears, anger, the dramatic scene that would let them paint me as unstable, ungrateful, difficult. Instead, I smiled. "This pie is delicious," I said. "I should get the recipe." The confusion on Victoria's face was almost worth the betrayal. Almost. I stayed another hour making small talk, laughing at Dad's jokes, complimenting Mom's hosting skills. I hugged everyone goodbye, wished them well, and drove home to my apartment in the city. The one I bought with my own money and decorated with furniture nobody else had opinions about. Then I opened my laptop. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. "Victoria, did you seriously just close our accounts?" I didn't respond. I was too busy working through the list I'd started compiling around the time Mom had begun handing out envelopes like party favors. The joint account I'd opened with my parents to help them manage expenses closed. My name removed from the automatic transfers that had been flowing from my checking account into theirs every month for 3 years. Canceled. Victoria's credit card, the one technically in my name, because her credit was still recovering from her entrepreneurial phase, frozen, then canceled. The college fund I'd been contributing to for Lily, I couldn't touch the money that was already there, but I could stop the monthly deposits and remove myself as the account administrator. The family cell phone plan that somehow included Victoria's entire family canceled. They had until the end of the billing cycle. The car insurance that bundled Victoria's SUV with my sedan for a discount that only benefited her, I called the company and split the policies. Her rate would triple by morning. My phone started ringing at 12:03 a.m. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 12:07 a.m. Dad. Voicemail. 12:15 a.m. Victoria again. Then 3 rapid-fire texts. "You're being ridiculous. It was just a joke. Call Mom back. She's crying." I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive kind I kept for special occasions, and settled onto my couch. Outside, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. Inside my apartment was quiet, peaceful mine. My phone didn't stop buzzing for hours. The next morning, I woke to 47 missed calls and 63 text messages. I ignored them all through my yoga session, my shower, my carefully prepared breakfast of avocado toast and black coffee. At 9:30 a.m., someone pounded on my door. Victoria stood in the hallway, still in yesterday's clothes, mascara-smudged hair uncombed. She'd never looked less like the golden child. "What the hell is wrong with you?" She pushed past me into my apartment without invitation. "Do you know what you've done?" "I've stopped paying for your life. Would you like coffee?" This isn't funny. Jessica Brandon's card got declined at the grocery store this morning, in front of everyone. We have nothing for Lily's breakfast. There's a grocery store on every corner. I'm sure they take cash. We don't have cash. Everything's in the account you just closed. I leaned against my kitchen counter, cradling my coffee mug. You mean the account that I was funding, the one I deposited money into every month so you could pretend to have financial stability. You never said anything about that being your money. I never said it wasn't. Her face cycled through expressions: shock, anger, disbelief, then something that might have been understanding if it had lasted longer than a second. You're really going to do this over a stupid envelope? This has nothing to do with an envelope, Victoria. This has to do with 32 years of being treated like an ATM with a pulse. This has to do with every time I covered your rent, paid your credit card bills, bought your daughter's school supplies, co-signed your loans, and never heard thank you. Never heard anything except what else I could do, what else I could give, what else I could sacrifice so you could live comfortably. We're a family. Family doesn't laugh when someone gets deliberately excluded. Family doesn't treat each other like a helper. You're being dramatic. I walked to my door and opened it. I have plans today. You should leave. Jessica, please. Brandon already called Dad. We're supposed to have a family meeting tomorrow. Just fix this before then, and we can all move past it. I'm not coming to any family meeting. You have to? Actually, I don't. That's what you're all about to learn. I don't have to do anything I don't want to anymore. She stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Finally, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, pausing at the elevator to throw back one final attack. You're going to regret this. The elevator doors closed on her red face, and I shut my apartment door, locking both deadbolts. I didn't regret it through the afternoon when Dad called, and I let it go to voicemail. I didn't regret it through the evening when Mom texted a long paragraph about family values and forgiveness that didn't include an apology. I didn't regret it through the weekend when Uncle Richard left a message calling me selfish, apparently forgetting I'd loaned him $10,000 for his medical bills 2 years ago. Monday morning, I walked into work with my head high and my conscience clear. My assistant Jennifer greeted me with her usual smile, handing me my schedule and a coffee from the good place downstairs. How was Thanksgiving? She asked. Illuminating. Tuesday brought a letter delivered to my office by courier, Mom's handwriting on the envelope. Inside a card with a generic message about gratitude and a check for $500, the same amount she'd given everyone else on Thanksgiving. I deposited the check, then used it to buy myself the designer handbag I'd been eyeing for months. Every time I carried it, I'd remember the price of my self-respect was far higher than they'd ever imagined. The calls didn't stop. My voicemail became a chronicle of desperation masked as righteousness. Dad left messages about family legacy and what would your grandmother think, conveniently forgetting that Grandma Rose had left me out of her will, entirely splitting everything between Victoria and him because I had a good job and didn't need it. Aunt Susan, who sat silently during the envelope distribution, suddenly had strong opinions about my character. Uncle Richard accused me of destroying the family over petty jealousy. The most revealing message came from Brandon on Wednesday afternoon. His voice cracked halfway through. Jessica, I know we've had our differences, but Lily is asking why you won't return her calls. I saved that voicemail. Something about it crystallized everything wrong with the past decade. We had plans based on that money. Plans built on my money, made without my input, assumed as guaranteed at sunrise. I saved that voicemail. Something about it crystallized everything wrong with the past decade. They constructed entire futures on the foundation of my wallet, never considering that I might have my own plans, my own dreams, my own breaking point. Work became my sanctuary. The Patterson account required 18-hour days that week, giving me legitimate reasons to ignore personal calls. My team delivered a presentation that had the clients nodding before we'd finished the third slide. Afterward, my boss, Catherine, pulled me aside. Whatever's going on in your personal life, you're channeling it productively, she said. That was the best pitch I've seen from you. Thank you. I mean it, Jessica. You've always been good, but lately there's something different, sharper, more confident. She paused. I'm putting your name forward for the executive track. There's going to be a VP position opening in March. I'd wanted that promotion for 3 years. Somehow cutting off my family had freed up mental space I hadn't realized they'd been occupying. The constant low-level anxiety about who needed what, which bill was coming due, whose crisis needed managing it, had evaporated. My brain felt clearer, faster, unburdened. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at the Italian place downtown, the one with a tasting menu that cost more than Victoria's monthly car payment used to be. I sat at the bar, ordered the wine pairing, and struck up a conversation with the woman next to me. Her name was Gabrielle. She worked in venture capital, and she'd recently cut off her own toxic family. "Best decision I ever made," she said, swirling her Barolo. "People think you're supposed to tolerate anything from blood relatives. That's garbage. You wouldn't accept that treatment from a stranger. Why accept it from family? Bon, same as all." My sister laughed when my mother deliberately excluded me from getting what everyone else got. "And you left eventually." "First, I shut down every account I'd been funding." Gabrielle laughed a full-throated sound of genuine delight. "Oh, I like you. What happened?" I told her the whole story, fueled by good wine and the anonymity of a stranger who had no stake in my choices. She listened without judgment occasionally, interjecting with her own similar experiences. By the time dessert arrived, I felt lighter than I had in years. "They'll try to get you back," Gabrielle warned. "Not because they love you, but because they need you. There's a difference." I'm beginning to understand that. We exchanged numbers. She became my first real friend in the city, someone who understood the specific pain of being the family ATM. Over the following weeks, she'd text me screenshots of absurd messages from her own relatives, and I'd respond with Victoria's latest guilt trip. We turned our shared trauma into dark comedy, robbing it of its power to hurt us. Thursday morning, I received an email from Dad's accountant. The subject line read, "Urgent Mitchell Family Trust Matters." My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won. I opened it. The email outlined what I'd suspected but never confirmed. Dad's retirement accounts were depleted. He'd been living off them for years, supplemented by my monthly transfers, convinced the market would recover enough to sustain them. It hadn't. Mom's medical expenses were climbing. Their house, the one I'd helped save from foreclosure, had a second mortgage they'd taken out last year. Without my contributions, they were looking at bankruptcy within 6 months. The accountant, a man named Harold Peterson, whom I'd met twice at family gatherings, wrote, "Your father asked me to contact you directly. He's too proud to beg, but Jessica, they need help. I reviewed their finances thoroughly. The only viable option is either significant family support or selling the house and drastically downsizing." I read the email 3 times, waiting to feel something. Guilt obligation, the old instinct to fix things. Instead, I felt nothing but a distant sort of pity, the kind you might feel reading about strangers' misfortunes in the newspaper. I replied to Harold, "Thank you for the information. I recommend they consult a bankruptcy attorney. I won't be providing financial support." His response came within minutes. "I understand this is complicated, but they're your parents. And I was their daughter. They made their choices." Harold didn't write back. That afternoon, Victoria appeared at my office building. Security called up to ask if I wanted them to escort her out or let her come up. I considered both options, imagining the scene she'd make either way. Let her come up, but alert security to be ready if needed. She burst into my office looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her yoga pants were stained, her hair unwashed, her face puffy from crying or drinking or both. "You're killing them," she announced without preamble. "Dad's accountant says they're going bankrupt. Mom's stress is making her arthritis worse. This is on you." Jennifer started to rise from her desk outside my office, but I waved her off. "Come in and close the door, Victoria." She did, then stood in the middle of my office like an accusation given human form. "Sit down." "I don't want to sit." "Then stand, but lower your voice or security will remove you." That got through. She sank into the chair across from my desk, deflating like a balloon, losing air. "How much?" she asked finally. "Excuse me. How much do you want to help them? I know you're angry, but they're going to lose everything." "They already lost everything that mattered. They just didn't notice because they still had money." "Stop being cryptic and tell me what you want." "I don't want anything from any of you. That's what you don't understand. I'm not negotiating. I'm not playing a game. I'm done. You can't just be done with family. Watch me." Victoria's face cycled through emotions too fast to track. "Brandon left me," she said suddenly. "The fraud charges the financial pressure. He said he couldn't handle it. He took Lily and moved in with his mother in Florida. I'm alone in that house. We can't afford working retail for $12 an hour, and my own sister won't help me." The information should have moved me. Once it would have. I'd have already been calculating how much I could spare, what I could sacrifice. Now I heard the manipulation in every word. "I'm sorry your husband left. That must be difficult." Difficult. Her voice climbed toward hysteria. "I'm losing everything. my marriage, my daughter, my house, and you're sorry. What do you want me to say, Victoria? That I'll swoop in and fix it, pay your mortgage, cover your legal fees, fund your fresh start. That's what you're here for, isn't it? Not to apologize, not to acknowledge what you did, but to see if you can squeeze a few more dollars out of me. I tried to apologize. You laughed at Thanksgiving when Mom skipped me. You laughed and said I didn't count. That wasn't a joke. That was the truth of how you've always seen me. It was a stupid comment. You're destroying our entire family over one stupid comment. No, Victoria, I'm saving myself after 32 years of being destroyed by this family. There's a difference. She started crying. Then big heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Part of me wondered if they were real or performed. Another part didn't care anymore. Please, she gasped between sobs. Please, Jessica, I know I've been awful. I know I took advantage. I'll do better. I'll change. Just help Mom and Dad. They don't deserve this. What do they deserve? The question seemed to stump her. She wiped her nose with her sleeve, looking around my office as if the answer might be written on the walls. Her gaze snagged on the framed photo on my shelf, me at a work retreat in Colorado, smiling, genuinely surrounded by colleagues who respected me. They deserve their daughter's help in a crisis, she said finally. They had that for years. They used it up. People don't use up. Family doesn't have limits. Actually, Victoria, everyone has limits. You all just assumed mine were infinite. You were wrong. Security knocked on my door. Jennifer must have called them. Everything okay in here, Ms. Mitchell? My sister was just leaving. Victoria stood swaying slightly. You'll regret this. When they're gone and you're alone, you'll wish you'd been there for them. Maybe, but I'll still have my self-respect. She left without another word. I watched from my office window as she crossed the parking lot to a beat-up Honda Civic that must have been 15 years old, nothing like the new SUV she'd driven last year. She sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before starting the engine and pulling away. Jennifer appeared with coffee, the good kind, from the cafe next door. You okay? Getting there. Your family sounds exhausting. They were. Past tense. The rest of the week crawled by each day, bringing new attempts to breach my boundaries. Mom sent flowers to my office with a card that said, "Family is forever." I donated them to the hospital across the street. Dad's lawyer sent a formal letter suggesting mediation. I sent back a formal response declining. Aunt Susan tried the sympathy angle, leaving messages about how disappointed my late grandmother would be. I blocked her number. The most effective attack came from an unexpected source, Lily. She somehow got my work email and sent a message with the subject line, "Why do you hate us?" The body of the email was a teenage essay on family obligation, peppered with guilt trips about how much she'd looked forward to college, how her friends all had help from relatives, how it wasn't fair that her life was falling apart because of adult problems. The email ended, "I thought you loved me. I guess I was wrong. I guess money is more important than your own niece." I stared at that email for an hour, feeling the old conditioning rise up. She was 13, just a kid, manipulated by adults into being their weapon. It wasn't her fault. Except it was exactly Victoria's strategy: use the child as an emotional hostage. Bank on my inability to hold a teenager accountable for her parents' poison. I wrote and deleted 5 responses before settling on the truth. Lily, I do love you, but love doesn't mean letting people treat you badly forever. Your mother and grandparents made choices that hurt me deeply. I had to make choices to protect myself. I hope someday you'll understand that healthy relationships require respect from everyone involved, not just sacrifice from one person. I wish you the best in your life. I never received a response. Either Victoria intercepted it, or Lily had no idea what to do with the honesty. Friday afternoon, Catherine called me into her office. My stomach dropped, wondering if Victoria had escalated her campaign to my workplace, but Catherine was smiling. The executive committee met this morning. They want to fast-track your promotion. VP of Strategic Accounts, effective January 1st. 30% raise, full benefits package, corner office on the executive floor. The office blurred. I'd been so focused on the family crisis that I'd forgotten about the promotion entirely. Are you serious? Dead serious. You've earned it, Jessica. The Patterson presentation sealed it, but you've been building toward this for years. Congratulations. I floated through the rest of the day in a daze of competing emotions. Professional triumph tangled with personal loss. Success shadowed by the knowledge that my family would never celebrate this with me. Then I realized they'd never really celebrated anything with me. My college graduation had been overshadowed by Victoria's engagement. My first major promotion had coincided with her jewelry business launch, which my parents had funded with money they borrowed from me. Every milestone in my life had been scenery in the background of Victoria's main character story. Now I was the protagonist of my own life, and the supporting cast had been cut from the production. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went through my phone and systematically blocked every family member's number: Mom, Dad, Victoria, Brandon, Lily, Uncle Richard, Aunt Susan, even distant cousins who'd probably be recruited for guilt trip duty eventually. Each blocked number felt like removing a weight from my shoulders. When I finished, my phone was silent for the first time in weeks. No buzzing, no notifications, no urgent demands disguised as family concern. Just peace. I ordered Thai food, opened a bottle of wine, and binge-watched a show I'd been meaning to catch up on for months. Around midnight, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd spent an evening without some family-related anxiety gnawing at my consciousness. This was what normal people's lives felt like: the lightness, the freedom to just exist without constantly managing someone else's crisis or calculating whether I could afford someone else's emergency. I could get used to this. The family meeting happened without me. I know because Victoria texted me a photo of everyone gathered in Mom and Dad's living room, accompanied by, "See what you're missing." What I saw was a collection of people who had taken my generosity for granted, mistaken my love for weakness, and assumed I'd always be there to fund their choices. What I didn't see was any reason to regret my decision. The photo haunted me more than I wanted to admit. There was Mom in her favorite armchair, the one I bought her for her 60th birthday. Dad standing behind her, with his hand on her shoulder, presenting a united front. Victoria on the couch, looking victorious. Uncle Richard and Aunt Susan flanking them like reinforcements. Even Brandon was there, which surprised me, given Victoria's claim that he'd left her. So that had been a lie too. Just another manipulation, another attempt to extract sympathy and money. I zoomed in on each face, looking for any hint of remorse or self-reflection. Nothing. They looked like a board of directors called to address a problem employee, not a family grappling with their own toxicity. My phone rang an hour later. Unknown number. I answered, breaking my own rule, curiosity getting the better of me. Jessica Mitchell. A man's voice unfamiliar. Who is asking? My name is Timothy Shaw. I'm a family therapist your parents hired to help mediate the situation. They've given me permission to reach out to you. How did you get this number? Your mother provided it. I understand there's been significant family conflict, and I'd like to offer my services as a neutral third party to help you all navigate. Let me stop you right there, Timothy. Did my parents mention that my sister tried to commit fraud using my identity, that they've been financially exploiting me for years, that they deliberately humiliated me in front of the entire family? A pause. They mentioned there was a financial disagreement and some hurt feelings around the holidays. Hurt feelings, that's what they called it. Family dynamics are complex. Often there are misunderstandings on both sides. Timothy, I'm going to save you some time. I didn't hire you. I don't want your services. Whatever my parents are paying you to fix this, it's a waste of their money, which is ironic, since apparently they don't have any. Ms. Mitchell, I understand you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm done. There's a difference. Please don't contact me again. I hung up and immediately blocked that number too. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to my office. Not Victoria this time, Mom. Jennifer tried to stop her, but Mom pushed past, moving faster than her arthritis should have allowed. Jessica Eleanor Mitchell, you will listen to me. She stood in my office doorway, 63 years old, and trembling with either rage or fear, or both. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup immaculate, her designer outfit likely financed by one of those Thanksgiving envelopes. She looked nothing like a woman facing bankruptcy. You have 5 minutes, I said, not standing. Then security will escort you out. Mom closed the door and sat down without being invited, perching on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight. How did I raise such a cruel daughter? Is that a genuine question or rhetorical? Don't be smart with me. I'm your mother, and I'm your daughter. The one you deliberately excluded in front of the entire family. The one whose years of financial support you never acknowledged. Should I continue? That envelope situation was a misunderstanding. Really? How do you misunderstand skipping one person while giving everyone else money? Her face flushed. You make plenty of money. You don't need a few hundred. So you admit it was deliberate. I admit that we thought you'd understand. Victoria and Brandon are struggling. Lily needs things. Your father and I are on a fixed income. You have more than enough. I had more than enough because I worked for it, not because it materialized out of thin air. We never asked you for anything you weren't willing to give. The revisionism was breathtaking. You asked me for money constantly, every month like clockwork. Victoria's rent, Brandon's car payment, Lily's school expenses, your property taxes, Dad's medical bills, the roof, the kitchen. We didn't ask for all of that. You offered. I offered because you'd already told me you were desperate. Because you'd already explained there was no other option. Because I'd been conditioned since childhood to believe that my worth to this family was measured in how much I could provide. Mom's eyes welled with tears, the same performance she'd perfected over decades. I can't believe you think we'd only love you for money. When did you ever love me for anything else? The question hung in the air like smoke. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I waited, genuinely curious to hear her answer. That's not fair, she finally said. What's not fair is realizing at 32 that your own family sees you as a resource instead of a person. You're being dramatic. Families help each other. That's what love is. No, Mom. Love is reciprocal. Love is respectful. Love doesn't laugh when someone is deliberately excluded. What we had was a transaction, and I'm no longer accepting the terms. She pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbing at her eyes carefully to preserve her mascara. Your father is having chest pains from the stress. If something happens to him, you'll have to live with that. Dad had chest pains before I cut you off. He's had them for 3 years. I drove him to the cardiologist 6 times, remember? Each time the doctor said it was stress and poor diet and lack of exercise. Maybe suggest he try those solutions instead of blaming me. Everything was fine until you threw your tantrum. Everything was fine for you. I was drowning. But as long as the checks cleared, nobody noticed. Mom stood abruptly. I didn't raise you to abandon your family. You didn't raise me at all. You raised Victoria. I just existed alongside her, useful when you needed something invisible the rest of the time. She walked to the door, her hand on the knob. When we lose the house, when we're living in some terrible apartment in a bad neighborhood, when your father's health fails from the stress, I hope you'll be able to sleep at night. I'm sleeping better than I have in years. She left without another word. Jennifer appeared moments later with water and a sympathetic expression. That woman is a piece of work. You have no idea. Actually, I do. My mother-in-law is exactly like that. Weaponized guilt is their superpower. How do you deal with it? I don't. My husband finally set boundaries and she didn't speak to us for 2 years. Best 2 years of my marriage. Jennifer grinned. She came crawling back eventually. They always do once they realize the bank is actually closed. Her words stayed with me through the weekend. I'd been operating under the assumption that cutting them off was permanent, final, irreversible. But what if they did come back? What if they eventually apologized, acknowledged their behavior, tried to rebuild on healthier terms? Would I even want that? The question bothered me more than the answer, which was probably not. The relationship was too damaged, the foundation too rotten. You couldn't renovate a house that needed to be condemned. Sunday morning, I went for a run in the park near my apartment. The December cold bit at my exposed skin, but the physical exertion felt good cleansing. Halfway through my usual route, I passed a woman with 2 children, maybe 8 and 10 years old. They were laughing, throwing bread to ducks at the pond, completely absorbed in their simple joy. The mother caught my eye and smiled. Just a brief, ordinary moment of shared humanity, but something about it cracked something open in my chest. I'd never have that with my mother. Whatever chance we'd had at an uncomplicated relationship had been strangled years ago by inequality and resentment and the slow poison of being valued only for what I could provide. The grief hit me suddenly, sharp and unexpected. Not grief for what I'd lost by cutting them off, but grief for what had never existed in the first place. The loving family, the supportive parents, the sister who was a friend instead of a competitor. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn something that was never available for purchase. I finished my run with tears freezing on my cheeks. But by the time I got home, showered, and made coffee, the grief had transformed into something cleaner. Acceptance. They were who they were. I was who I was. And those two realities were fundamentally incompatible. Wednesday, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jessica Mitchell, a woman's voice professional. This is Karen Rodriguez from First National Bank. We're calling about a loan application listing you as a cosigner. The applicants are Brandon and Victoria Hughes. I didn't cosign any loan. That's what we needed to verify. We received an application with what appears to be your forged signature. We'll be declining the application and flagging the account for fraud. After I hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. They'd tried to forge my signature. They'd tried to trap me back into their financial web without my consent or knowledge. The anger I'd held at bay with rational decisions and cool distance finally broke through. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. By Friday, I'd filed police reports for the attempted fraud, sent cease and desist letters to Victoria and Brandon, and begun the process of freezing my credit to prevent any future attempts. My lawyer assured me the case was straightforward, especially since the bank had caught it early. My parents called that evening Dad. This time, his voice heavy with disappointment that no longer had the power to wound me. Jessica, we need to talk about these legal actions. My lawyer is handling everything. Dad, if you have questions, contact him. Your mother is devastated. Victoria made a mistake, but involving lawyers is extreme. Victoria tried to commit fraud using my identity. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. She's desperate. You cut them off without warning. I gave 32 years of warning. Nobody was paying attention. You're throwing away your family over money. The laugh that escaped me was bitter enough to taste. I'm not throwing away anything. You all made it very clear on Thanksgiving what my value is to this family. I'm simply accepting that assessment and acting accordingly. Your mother is too upset to talk to you right now. Then don't put her on the phone. Silence stretched between us, filled with everything we'd never said to each other. The favoritism, the inequality, the slow erosion of whatever bond we'd once shared. I raised you better than this, Dad finally said. You raised me to believe family was supposed to love each other. Turns out you were teaching Victoria, and I was just the example of what happens when you don't fit the mold. I hung up before he could respond. December arrived with the kind of cold that seeps into bones and settles there. I spent my first holiday season alone, declining invitations from colleagues who wanted to include the sad single woman in their celebrations. I wasn't sad, though. I was free. The fraud case moved forward. Victoria had apparently signed my name on documents worth $75,000, a loan they planned to use for a down payment on a bigger house. The bank's fraud department had records of everything, including phone calls where Victoria had impersonated me. My lawyer was gleeful. This is the most documented case I've seen in years. They'll likely face criminal charges. I just want them to stop, I said. I don't want to destroy them. Then you shouldn't have been related to idiots. Christmas came and went. I bought myself presents, the espresso machine I'd always wanted. First edition books, a weekend trip to a spa in Vermont. I video chatted with friends who had drifted away during the years I'd been too busy managing family crises to maintain outside relationships. I discovered I actually enjoyed my own company when it wasn't constantly interrupted by demands disguised as family obligation. January brought resolution. Victoria and Brandon pled guilty to attempted fraud as part of a deal that kept them out of jail but saddled them with fines, probation, and criminal records. Their lawyer contacted mine to discuss restitution for the emotional distress and legal fees. I settled for a written apology and a permanent restraining order. The apology arrived in February, typed on plain paper, clearly written by their lawyer. It contained no emotion, no real acknowledgement of the years of exploitation, just legal language crafted to satisfy the court's requirements. I used it to line the bottom of my recycling bin. Spring brought my promotion to executive director, a title that came with a corner office and enough salary to make my previous $250,000 look quaint. I bought a house in the suburbs. Nothing ostentatious, just a 3-bedroom craftsman with a garden and a study where I could work from home. My first dinner party was intimate, 6 friends from work. Good wine, catered food, because I couldn't be bothered to cook. Nobody asked me for money. Nobody expected me to solve their problems. Nobody treated me like anything other than what I was, a successful woman who had worked hard and earned her place. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd ever had, even though it was only April. I never heard from my parents directly again, though Mom sent birthday cards with no return address. Victoria's social media showed her working a retail job. Brandon looking significantly older. Lily in public school. They'd moved to a smaller house in a less expensive neighborhood. Their cars were older practical models. Victoria's posts about gratitude and growth felt performative, carefully crafted to rebuild her image. I didn't hate them. Hate required emotional investment I no longer possessed. They'd become strangers who happened to share my DNA. People I'd once known in another lifetime. In August, I met Daniel at a work conference. He was a consultant from Seattle, funny and kind, with a healthy relationship with his own family and no debt beyond his mortgage. When I told him about Thanksgiving expecting judgment or discomfort, he simply nodded. "Good for you," he said. Family is supposed to be the people who make your life better, not worse. We dated long distance for 6 months before he relocated to Boston for a position at a rival firm. He moved into my house in December, right before the holidays. We hosted Thanksgiving that year, inviting his parents and siblings, my friends, my assistant Jennifer, and her husband. 20 people crowded into my dining room, laughing and talking over each other, passing dishes family style, nobody keeping score of who brought what or who contributed how much. Daniel's mother insisted on doing the dishes despite my protests. His father told terrible jokes that everyone pretended were funny. His sister taught me how to make her famous apple pie from scratch. This was what family was supposed to feel like. At the end of the night, after everyone had left and Daniel was loading the dishwasher, I stood in my living room looking at the controlled chaos of a successful gathering. Wrinkled napkins, wine glasses with lipstick prints, crumbs on the hardwood, the lingering smell of turkey and pie. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I saw your Facebook photos. Looks like you found a new family to use." Victoria. She'd clearly been lurking on my public profile, monitoring my life from whatever distance the restraining order required. I deleted the message without responding. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You okay?" "More than okay." "Was that your sister?" "That was nobody." He kissed my temple, and we stood there in comfortable silence in the home I'd bought with my own money, surrounded by the life I'd built on my own terms. The envelope Mom had skipped me with that Thanksgiving had contained $500. The accounts I'd shut down that night had been funneling roughly $7,000 a month into my family's pockets. Over 3 years, I'd given them almost $250,000, not counting the larger one-time expenses, co-signed loans, paid off debts, emergency funds that never got repaid. But what they'd really lost wasn't the money. It was me. The daughter and sister who'd loved them despite everything, who'd kept showing up, kept helping, kept hoping that someday they'd see me as more than a resource to be exploited. They'd lost someone who would have given them anything if they had just treated me with basic respect. And I gained something immeasurably more valuable, proof that I was worth more than they'd ever acknowledged, proof that I was strong enough to walk away, proof that I was capable of building something better. The bonuses they'd received that Thanksgiving were gone by morning, spent on things I'm sure they felt they deserved. My cards had declined at their breakfast table, ending the free ride they'd enjoyed for years. But the real loss was still being calculated. Every birthday I didn't attend. Every holiday I celebrated elsewhere. Every milestone they'd miss in my life because they'd forfeited their invitation to it. They'd counted me out that Thanksgiving. They'd been right. I didn't count anymore, not in their world. But I counted in mine. And that made all the difference. Years later, when people asked if I regretted it, if I missed my family, if I'd ever reconcile, I thought about that moment, Thanksgiving, Victoria's laugh. Mom's satisfied smile, the weight of that excluded envelope I'd never received. I thought about the life I'd built afterward. Daniel, who became my husband. Our daughter Sophie, who'd never know the sting of unequal love. The career I'd advanced without family obligations holding me back. The friendships I deepened when I had time to nurture them. Then I'd smile and say, I didn't lose my family, I upgraded. Because the truth was, I'd spent 32 years being part of a family that never really wanted me, just my money. Now I had a family that wanted me for exactly who I was.